It happened in 1969, but sometimes when I wake up in the middle of the night, drenched in sweat, I swear I can still see her eyes. They weren't angry. They weren't even afraid. They were just wide, dark, confused, like she didn't understand why I was there. With a rifle pointed at her chest, I was 20. From a small town in upstate New York. I didn't know anything about Vietnam. Couldn't have found it on a map. But when the draft came, I didn't protest. I didn't ask questions. They said I'd be defending freedom, that we were stopping the spread of communism. And when I got off the plane in Da Nang, all I could think about was how hot it was and how young we all looked. My first patrol was near a village outside Quang Tri. We were told it was a hostile area, that the Viet Cong hid among civilians, that no one could be trusted. They briefed us. If it moves and doesn't stop, shoot. That day we approached the village at dawn. The sun was barely up, and the mist still clung to the paddies. I don't know who fired first. Maybe it was one of ours. Maybe we heard something we weren't supposed to hear. All I remember is the chaos. And in the middle of it, I saw a figure run behind a hut. Small. Quick. I raised my rifle. I didn't even think, just followed training, one shot. She dropped instantly. I remember walking over, my hands shaking, my breath loud in my helmet. And there she was. A little girl, maybe 8 years old. She wore a blue dress. There was dirt on her knees, and in her hand, a cloth doll, missing an arm. Her eyes were still open. A woman came running from the far side of the hut, screaming in a language I didn't understand. But I didn't need to. She fell beside the girl, screamed. Then didn't, just rocked her, back and forth, back and forth. Someone yelled to keep moving. I did, but I left something behind, something I never got back. They told us war was ugly, but they never told us it would follow us home. Every time I close my eyes, I see her. Not bloody, not broken, just looking at me, like she's still waiting for me to explain. And I still don't have the words. They say war changes you, but they never say when. For me, it wasn't the first firefight. It was the moment I stepped over a girl's body and realized she was still warm. It was a search operation. Nothing special. Just like the last 5. We moved through a cluster of homes built from bamboo and tin. Dirt floors. Chickens scattering as we passed. Women gathering water. A few boys watching from behind trees. Same as always. We were told to clear every hut. Intel said weapons might be hidden. Rice caches, sometimes radios. And we were told, if anyone runs, they could be Viet Cong. That was the rule. I don't remember hearing a shot first, just the sound of someone shouting. Maybe my sergeant, maybe me. A young girl darted from a doorway, clutching something tight against her chest. She was maybe 10, maybe less. Her eyes locked on mine for a second, and I fired. The sound was quick, clean, efficient, just like they taught us at Camp Pendleton. I moved forward. Protocol. The others fanned out, some shouting clear, some flipping mats, poking through crates, but I looked down. She lay there in the dust, a red scarf now dark with blood. Her hand still holding it. A doll, not a weapon, not a grenade. A doll. I don't remember what I said. Maybe nothing. Someone behind me said, keep moving. But my feet wouldn't. I knelt. She still had one. Shoe on. I touched her cheek and she was still warm. Her eyes were open. That same wide, round look I saw in the moment before the shot. But now they were glass. Like she had already gone somewhere else. Somewhere I could never follow. That night, I sat outside our bunker and smoked 3 cigarettes in a row. I didn't even smoke before the war. I couldn't talk. I couldn't eat. One of the guys, Martinez, came over and said, "Man, don't do this to yourself. You didn't know. It's the fog of war." I wanted to punch him, but instead, I nodded, like a coward. Later, I heard from a local interpreter that the girl's name was Lynn. She was 9. She was running to her mother after hearing gunfire, afraid. She wasn't the enemy. She was a child. For the next 3 days, I didn't speak, unless spoken to. On the 4th day, we hit another village. I couldn't raise my weapon. I saw a shadow in a doorway and froze. The sergeant yelled. I didn't move. I couldn't. That night, I wrote a letter I never sent. Dear Mom, I shot a child today. Her name was Lynn. I don't think I can ever be the same again. I burned that letter before sunrise. We kept moving, operation after operation, village after village. I stopped asking names, stopped looking people in the eyes. But her face, it stayed with me. Every night. Every time I blinked too long, I came home a year later. With medals I didn't want. With stories I couldn't tell. When people asked, did you kill anyone? I'd laugh it off. Don't remember. Just kept moving. But I remembered. I remembered every second. A few years later, I heard about a group called Vietnam Veterans Against the War. They were sharing their stories, confessing even, trying to make sense of what they had done and what they had become. I attended a meeting in Boston. It was in the basement of a church, dim lights, folding chairs, a circle of men who looked older than their years. When it was my turn to speak, I couldn't. I just said her name, Lynn, and I cried. There was another man, older than me, said he had accidentally fired into a hut and killed a pregnant woman. He looked at me and said, you never stop hearing their silence. That was when I realized something. We had all brought someone home with us. Not a friend, not a comrade, a ghost. People say, you have to forgive yourself, but I don't think you ever really do. You just learn how to live next to the guilt, like a neighbor you never invited who never leaves, but sometimes lets you sleep a little. If I close my eyes, I still see Lynn, running, reaching. And I want to believe that in some small way, telling this story means I finally stopped pulling the trigger. They told us once we got home it would be over. But the war didn't end at the airport, it just changed zip codes. I landed in San Francisco in April 1970. The plane doors opened, and for the first time in a year, I stepped onto American soil. No fanfare, no welcome home banners. Just a few stares, a few people turning away, and one man in a suit. He spit on the ground near my boots and muttered, "Baby killer." I didn't say a word. I wanted to scream. I wanted to cry. But mostly, I just wanted to disappear. Back home in upstate New York, everything looked the same. The diner, the gas station, the hills in the distance. But I wasn't the same. I couldn't sit through family dinners. The clinking of silverware made my hands shake. Fireworks on the 4th of July made me drop to the ground, covering my ears. My mother said I looked haunted. She was right. I didn't sleep. When I did, I saw Lynn. Sometimes she was reaching for me, sometimes she was turning her back and walking into fire. I'd wake up screaming. People asked if I was okay. I'd smile and say, yeah, just adjusting. But how do you adjust from shooting a child? How do you go from carrying a rifle and rice paddies to standing in line at the grocery store like nothing happened? I tried working construction. Lasted 3 weeks. The sound of nail guns reminded me of automatic fire. I tried school. Couldn't focus. Everyone was younger, talking about Woodstock and protests. I just sat in the back, quiet, watching the door. Relationships? Didn't work. I couldn't touch anyone without thinking of blood. I couldn't love without guilt. I once told a girl about Vietnam, just a little. She said it wasn't your fault. I left the next morning, because it was. The VA doctors called it combat fatigue. Later, they called it PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. But at the time, all they gave me were sleeping pills and instructions to stay busy. I stayed drunk instead. For a while, I thought about ending it. I'd loaded my pistol more. Then once, put it on the nightstand, looked at it like it owed me something. But every time I saw her, Lynn, I couldn't pull the trigger. Because if I died, I'd never get to tell her story. That's why I started writing. Not for forgiveness. Not for peace, just to make sure someone somewhere knew what we did. I met other vets through a group in Boston, Vietnam Veterans Against the War. We sat in circles, told the truth, cried, yelled, listened. One guy said he accidentally killed a woman holding a baby. Another said he set fire to a village because his buddy had stepped on a mine. None of us bragged. No one called it duty. We just needed someone to hear us, to say, "I know, me too." We testified before Congress in 1971, Winter Soldier investigation, not to destroy America, but to stop America from pretending. I sat at a microphone and said the words I couldn't say to my own father. I shot a child in Vietnam. Her name was Linh. I was told it was war, but no war should start with that. Some reporters said we were lying, that we were exaggerating, but the truth doesn't care who believes it. It just waits. I still have nightmares. I still wake up thinking I'm 20 again, rifle in hand, scanning the edge of a rice paddy. But some nights, not all, but some, I dream I'm sitting with Linh under a tree. No gun, no blood, just her, drawing in the dirt with her doll. She doesn't talk. She just looks at me. And for the first time, I don't feel like a monster. Just a man who broke and is trying to put the pieces back together. If I could speak to her, I wouldn't ask for forgiveness. I just want her to know that I remember. 50 years have passed. The uniform is gone. The rifle is gone. But her face, it's still here, in every reflection, in every silent moment, in every corner of memory that won't close. Her name was Linh. She was just a child, and I was the one who pulled the trigger. I don't tell this story for sympathy. I don't tell it to be called brave. I tell it because silence is worse. Silence is where lies live. Silence is where wars get rewritten. And if we ever want to stop repeating what we've done, we have to tell the truth, even the ugly parts. Especially the ugly parts. There are people who say, "You did what you were ordered to do, it was war." But war doesn't erase responsibility. War doesn't make it right. War doesn't erase a child's eyes staring at you as she falls. If I could sit beside Linh now, under a tree in some quiet field far from guns, I wouldn't try to explain. I wouldn't defend myself. I'd just sit and listen. And if she asked me, why, I'd tell her the only truth I have left, because I was scared, because I believed people who said killing was courage, because I didn't stop to see you, were just a little girl. And if she stayed quiet, if she turned away, I would understand, because I'm not asking for peace. I'm just asking that her memory be more than a flash of guilt, that her story be told, that someone, anyone, knows her name. Linh, I don't deserve forgiveness, but I promise you this: as long as I draw breath, you will not be forgotten.